Hello friends, this is Petra Dotson. Thank you for tuning in. Today, I am going to share with you my recent experience with prayer and fasting. It was an amazing experience, and I'm hoping that as you hear my testimony, that you'll be encouraged to try out fasting for yourself. Because if you're going through really difficult things in your life right now, if life is heavy, if you're looking for a deeper, more intimate relationship with God, more so than you have now, or if you just want to see things turn around, I definitely recommend this practice. I saw all of these things happen in my life during my time of prayer and fasting, and in my testimony today, I'll be sharing all about that with you. So, what is fasting? Well, without getting too much into the details, the basics of it is that fasting is a spiritual practice that's supported by the Bible that was done by so many people in Bible days and Jesus himself. And it basically consists of reducing or eliminating foods and other distractions in our lives that keep us from having that intimate focus on God, because we're pressing into him to get closer to him and to have him intervene in whatever difficult situation it is that we're facing. And so during that time, we're really pressing into God, praying, seeking him in his word, denying our flesh, and allowing God to show up and show out. And he really, really does during that time. Now, you may be wondering why I decided to do prayer and fasting. And the reason is pretty simple. During the year 2021 and even part of 2020, I had experienced some really heavy, challenging situations that were weighing on me. And even though my prayer life was good and my study life was good and my relationship with God was good, I still was having that heaviness on me. And that signaled to me that I needed to go deeper in my walk with God. And sometimes we as Christians think that if we have a good relationship with God, if things are not going as well as they should, that means that we're doing something wrong or something to that effect. But really, if you look in the Bible, there were people like Elijah the prophet and even Jesus that felt heaviness because of situations that they were facing. And it just means that we need to draw closer to God. And so that's one of the reasons that I decided to do fasting, just to have that more intimate time with God. And I also had some prayer requests that I had put before God that, humanly speaking, I felt that they were not getting through in the way they need to. And we know that our prayers do get through, but sometimes when we get in that situation, it may mean that we need to go deeper, press deeper and harder with our relationship with God. And so I prayed about it, and I felt that God was leading me to do prayer and fasting. And I've done fasting in the past, but there was just something different about 2020 and 2021 that just made fasting feel different this year. And so this year in 2022, I decided, led by God, to do a prayer and fasting time. How long did I fast? Well, I fasted for about 13 days. I prayed about it, and that's how God was leading. And at first, I didn't know that I was going to do 13 days. That was not revealed to me. I just knew that God wanted me to fast. So I was prayerful the whole time I did the fast to see where God was leading, just to make sure I was following him. And it ended up being 13 full days, the end of January of 2022. Now, what kind of fast was it and what did I do? Well, it was a mixed fast, meaning that I didn't just do one thing the whole time. As I said before, I prayed about it, and God led me to do water the first 3 days, water only. And then for the next 10 days, I had a very simple, plain vegan diet, which was fruits, vegetables, nuts, and grains, just very simply prepared foods. And that was basically how I was led by God in this part of my fast. And this was the physical aspect of my fast. Spiritually, I fasted from anything secular. So that's secular TV, secular programming of any kind, secular social media, secular functions. I still had to work, but I tried to keep things as spiritual as possible. So I did a lot of praying as much as I could all through the day, lots of Bible reading, claiming God's promises, and listening to spiritual music and spiritual programs. And that was what consisted of the spiritual part of my fast. Along with all of that, I wanted to be intentional, so I did journaling. And I journaled on my laptop, but I recommend that if you do this, you can journal in a normal book with pen and paper. But the reason that I did journaling is because I wanted to make sure that I wrote down all of my prayer requests in detail so that when God answered, I would not have forgotten anything or missed anything that he did. Because one thing that I've noticed is that sometimes when I pray to God and I don't write it down, I forget the details. So when God actually acts, sometimes it can seem like he didn't do anything because I've forgotten what I asked him. Or maybe it seems like things really haven't changed when they have, but I just don't notice it. So writing it down really is just amazing to help you see how God is moving, and it really did make a major positive impact on my fast. Next, how did I prepare for the fast? There were two aspects of preparation. One was the physical, and this is something we really want to pay attention to because whenever we change the way that we eat or what we put in our bodies, it can affect your body. It can affect you physically. So it's so important to prepare by reducing the amount of food that you eat ahead of time, or reducing certain things that can shock your body, like sugars or grains or whatever you eat a lot of. You want to definitely cut down on that a few days prior to the fast so that your body is not shocked when you go into a fast. And so I partially did this. Unfortunately, when I prayed about fasting, I felt God was leading me to do it sooner rather than later. So I didn't get as much physical preparation as I would have liked to, but I did get some. And the other aspect of preparation was the mental preparation. And this was a huge thing, especially for me. I'm a processor. I'm in my head a lot. And it's just really important to know what to expect from a fast before you go into it so you can be successful to make your way through it. Because when you make a vow to God that you're going to fast in a certain way, you want to keep that vow as much as possible. Now, if you mess up or you slip up, God will forgive you, but you definitely want to hop right back on the boat and continue the fast and keep your promise to God. And so I prepared myself mentally first by letting myself know that fasting is not a magic cure-all. It's not something you do and all your problems just dissolve like that. But God does move in amazing ways. So I wanted to have that balance that, even if things don't look the way that I think they should, I know that God has moved in this situation, even if it's different than what I thought it should look like. I also kept in mind that, the enemy would attack, because whenever he sees that you're trying to get close to God, and definitely that happens in prayer and fasting, he will come in with all kinds of temptations, doubts, fears, making things happen around you that just make it challenging to get through, all of that. And if you know ahead of time that that's going to happen, then you can be prepared to push through and finish out your fast. So those were the two major ways that I prepared for my fast, and I'm so glad that that preparation was in place because it was needed and it was so helpful during my time of fasting. How was the fasting process? Well, I have to say that with anything in life, there is the side that looks negative and there's the side that is positive. So for me, the negative side was that there was the temptation from the enemy. There were discouraging moments from the enemy. And I recognize them as spiritual attacks because I did mentally prepare. I felt like the enemy was telling me to give up, to not do the fast, that nothing would happen, that God would not move, that I was going to be disappointed. All of these things. It was really negative. It's amazing how the devil just really comes in and tries to attack us when we're getting closer to God. But because I knew that God was leading me, that I had prayed about it, and I had mentally prepared, I asked God to come in and just help me make it through, because I knew that if the enemy was attacking me that much, that early on, that God had a blessing for me. And besides that, I also felt a bit sick the first couple of days, which added to the feelings of discouragement, and you don't realize how much you go to social media or YouTube or whatever it is to kind of pick you up during the day. And when you're fasting, you don't do that. You focus more on prayer and the word. And so that's what I did. And that really helped me grow in my relationship with God. Now, on the positive side, I can say that after the first couple of days, I really started to experience clarity in my walk with God. I started to experience more peace. I started to get more energy. And the biggest improvement, or the biggest positive thing that I saw in my prayer and fasting, was with the journaling. Because honestly, the first couple of days, I was so distracted by just trying to get through it that I didn't notice how God was moving. And right before I went to journal, I thought to myself, wow, this day was a wash. I really didn't see God do anything. I guess it's going to have to be tomorrow. But as soon as I started writing everything down, I started to remember God had done this, and God had done that, and God had done the other. And it was just so amazing to me how I had forgotten that, or how I had missed it, just because I was so focused on just getting through the day. But that's why I really encourage you to do journaling if you do prayer and fasting, because it's so easy to miss things as we're just trying to make it through the fast. So that was a really positive and important and beneficial part of my fast. What were the benefits of my prayer and fasting time? Well, I can say that it was amazing. I saw God's hand move on every single prayer request that I had written down, that I had prayed about, that I had fasted about. Now, this doesn't mean that every problem is solved or that everything is perfect, but I saw God make an improvement in every single aspect of everything that I prayed about. And of course, my prayer requests are personal, so I can't share all of them with you. But there are 3 main prayer requests that I had that I will share how God came through in those areas. There was a need that I had, something that needed to be provided for me that I absolutely didn't know how I was going to get. I just had no idea, and I didn't want to worry about it. But on the other hand, I'm a planner, and so it was at the back of my mind. And so I just lifted that prayer up to God and asked Him to provide. And during my prayer and fasting time, before it was even over, God gave me exactly what I needed, and even more than what I needed. And it was really amazing how it happened. And it was so nice to see God's hand move in that way during my prayer and fasting time. And then there was another area that I was praying about, which was to have that peace and that clarity and that confirmation that I was following God's direction in my life. Because in the year 2021 especially, I felt that I was having some difficulty knowing if I was really on the right path in certain decisions that I was making. And I was agonizing about that with God. I just wanted to know. I wanted Him to confirm to me that the way He was leading me was really the path that I was taking, that I was hearing Him correctly. And God confirmed that in so many different ways. It was just amazing. I wish I could go into details, but some of it is very personal. But it was awesome to see that God confirmed His word to me. He really spoke to me. And one of the biggest areas that I prayed about was just to be closer to God, to be more sensitive to His Holy Spirit, and to draw closer to Him in peace. And all of that happened. God really drew me to Himself, because there is just a peace in the presence of God. When you block out all the noise of the world, all the distractions, and you just soak in God, there's just something about that. There's a peace that's just it's just more than you can even really explain. And that's what happened to me. Those challenging situations that I talked about earlier that were weighing down heavily on me, that weight was lifted immensely. It doesn't mean that the situations have necessarily changed, but my perspective on them and the way that I feel about them has turned around. And that is truly a miracle, because before it was something that was real pressing. I mean, it's difficult to explain if you're not going through it, but if you've been through anything heavy, you know how that can just weigh on you so much. And so I'm just thankful for seeing God's hands so vividly in this time of prayer and fasting. Because of that, I'm thankful that I obeyed His voice and that I went through with this prayer and fasting, because it was an experience like none other. I've done prayer and fasting before, but this one, especially with the journaling, it topped all of my other experiences with prayer and fasting. I really encourage you to try prayer and fasting, especially if you're going through a really difficult season in your life right now. If you're struggling under the weight of some addiction, if you're going through divorce or a breakup, if you've had a death of a loved one occur in your life, if you're going through heavy trials, whatever it is, I really recommend that you give prayer and fasting a try. Pray and ask God how He wants you to go about it, what He wants you to do, and just sit back and watch Him work miracles in your life. Your story may not be exactly like mine. God may not move in your life exactly the way He moved in my life this year, but I guarantee that He will do something special for you. And so I encourage you to do it. And if you have any more questions, definitely write them down in the comment section. This is not an exhaustive study or teaching on fasting, but I'd be happy to answer any questions about my experience and what I've learned from the Bible about this wonderful practice. And if this video has been helpful to you, definitely like it and share it with a friend. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't as yet. Hit that notification bell so that you can be notified when I upload my next video. And until next time, take care, God bless, and Maranatha.